as noted, it is the legal obligation of the agency to receive an application, whether it's complete or not. Technically, what's written in our regulations is what we're putting out to say, this is what we believe you need in order for the agency to properly evaluate your proposal. Unless there's a waiver of certain conditions, which sometimes is appropriate, an applicant can come in with as little information as they want. The burden is on them to demonstrate to the agency what's being proposed. They've explained it, you can understand it, and you have enough information to act on it. It is certainly their peril to override the agency's list without a formal approval of waiving something, to say, I know you all said that's what you mean or you need, but I don't think you do. I mean, that's a tough position for an applicant to take. But it consistently happens. So in the staff reports, we try to be as clear as we can about what's missing in what section of the regulations. The agency in section 8.6 says incomplete applications shall be denied. The agency does not have an obligation to entertain the application beyond determining that it's incomplete. So it's really at your discretion how much you're willing to hear when an application comes in that's incomplete. Certainly it's frustrating for the staff. We've got to make evaluations and pass those on to you and to guide you, and then when we don't have things like a biological evaluation, that frequently are not part of initial submissions. The alternatives, like pulling teeth, if we ever get alternatives. We've had a couple of applications recently that have done a good job, but mostly no. And that's applicants saying they believe they know better than the agency about what you need to make a decision.
Very good. Any other agency comments?
No, I mean, I would agree with what's said. I mean, I think people spend a lot of time sitting in these meetings, and I mean, also we've got people here, and they go on and on for an hour, and that's an incomplete application. I think it's really unfair to the agency. It's unfair to people sitting here. I think we just have to find a way to cut it off quickly and stop wasting people's time.
I would agree. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rossi, for that comment.
You're welcome.
And I'm sure everyone in the room heard that as well. Let's move on then. First up is public hearing 2019-153, 42 Dublin Hill Road, Rocco V. DeAndrea, Inc. for LMD Dublin Hill LLC. The construction of a single-family residence driveway with wetland crossing, pool, septic, and drainage within and adjacent to wetlands. Mr. Quasi, please.
All right. We started looking at this at a public hearing session last month. The agency delayed making a decision. There were outstanding application requirements at that time. There is still an outstanding application requirement that they provide alternatives for the location and/or size of the house, which would increase separating distances between the house and the wetlands. That is outstanding tonight. However, they have submitted the biological narrative, a wetland watercourse assessment report, which is another requirement. The report goes into some detail on the wetland crossing, discusses a couple of alternatives that were considered, and explains why the applicant feels the proposed location is the most prudent and feasible, being at the narrowest spot of the wetland. This thing is not going to work for me. And they also say that the, I guess it's getting whited out by the screen, forget it. There will be wetland creation underneath the box culvert, which will, on an area basis, more than mitigate for the wetland loss due to the two footings that will be in the wetland. They've also proposed to eliminate a pipe further to the west along that drainage corridor and restore an additional 365 square feet of area into wetlands and 35 linear feet of open water course that's now piped. Point 3 in my report, I note that the applicant has still not explained when the septic leaching area is going to be developed to the point where the health department can determine whether it's a suitable spot for a septic system, specifically a septic system for this size, with this many bedrooms. This is pretty important in this case where we're talking about issues with separating distances, because if they can't get a, however many bedroom house this is, system into that spot, they may be pushed to develop a smaller house, which we would like to see. Let's see. The buffer area that I'm most concerned about is to the northeast of the house. It's right here in this spot. It's just 25 feet from the toe of fill to the wetland. The fill itself is going to be a 50% slope. Last month, the applicant was asked to explain how they're going to stabilize the fill and how the fill is going to be maintained in the future. Will it be turf? Will it be planted out? How will it be maintained? The wetland buffer habitat plan, which has been submitted, does show this as part of the landscape envelope, fill slope. And they say it will either be lawn or ornamental plantings. Well, I think the applicant needs to be a little more specific in this area or increase the separating distance so we're less concerned about this. Let's see. The other area is to the west of the house where the infiltration galleries are going to go. This, again, is in a created fill package that is adjacent to a steep slope that leads down to a wetland off-site. The agency members asked the applicant's environmental consultant to describe the off-site wetlands, which that consultant did examine when the Stanridge School applications were being prepared. So this description also remains outstanding. The questions that were raised last month about the forest subbase of the driveway entrance and whether that might dewater the western end of the southerly wetland seem to have been addressed by the applicant in detail that they've given for that stone subbase. There is a little bit of a discrepancy between what DPW would like to see regarding an impervious liner and what we might like to see, but because the design may not need an impervious liner to protect the wetland, I think this is an issue that can be worked out between DPW and the agency's staff if we get to that point. DPW has reviewed the revised drainage information and now finds the drainage design to be acceptable. I think the wetland and buffer habitat plan obviously is an improvement over previous submission, which was no plan, but there are 33 12 to 36 inch diameter trees that are going to be removed from the upland review area to complete this project. The planting plan includes 6 trees and 68 shrubs. I don't think this is adequate mitigation based on the agency.
On the property significantly from what it is now, and building a new clubhouse with a smaller footprint than the existing one and have a tennis court, park barn, moving some of those activities to the west side, which don't have any impact on the wetland wall, is a significant improvement on this site. I'd like to ask Mr. DeAndrea to go through the material that he has submitted to the
paragraph number 2 of Andai's summary, he talks of this 100-foot setback. And basically what he's saying here is, you take an item like this, which is the green, in this case the green, if we take the clubhouse that we presented and we flip it over, essentially, or slide it to the south, this would be the car staging area, the golf operation on the south side. And this would be running exactly, right along the edge of the green. So what they like to do is have separation of 100 feet. Kindergarten has a hard time providing that 100 feet in all the locations. And oftentimes it's more like 70 feet. But in this case,
All your members are extremely accurate with their shops.
no, they're not. Some people think they're more accurate than they are. On the other side too, this is where the seeking area would be, which is currently rolled down in this location here. And this would be the first peak, and this would be the, what we call the forward. And you can see here, as in the state, we have absolutely no separation. The other thing that he talks about in paragraph number 3 is he talks about what they call the spray angle or the cone, the safety cone. And that's what you see here. This is a 60-degree angle on both sides of that direction of which the property is right hit. And you can see on the first hit, but especially on the 18 holes as you come back, this whole staging area and this east side of the clubhouse is in that danger zone, within that cone of safety. And the other problem that occurs here is this becomes hard. If you land the ball on a rough area or grass, it absorbs it and it bounces off. That, when something like this, it comes down with that velocity, it takes off in that same direction, up towards the clubhouse, and you yell for as you do with the duck, but you have no idea where it's coming. And when it hits here, as it does currently, it gets immobilized. So the 10th dimension here too is when we were working on the other alternatives, we explored this for a good 15 months, and nothing was working. Everything we tried to do was keep the cart barn, or we eliminated it, grew the footprint, and then we finally kept commenting that no, that you're expanding that footprint is causing more problems with the city. So we started thinking, okay, if we can relocate this Patterson Tennis facility, and you as a golf course architect and redesign it, can you give us an area where we can
The stream where it flows along the second hole, we're just looking at the two sections in here with the cart in the middle. Yeah, what's the condition of that buffer to the stream? Is it just lawn right up to the edge? Is there an opportunity to create a berm or some plantings there to give it a little bit of infiltration before those fertilizers hit the stream?
Talking about that, that's kind of in an area of play, right there. On this, well, in this location here, if you cross the east side, now it's all right upgrade. And this is a landing area, especially for 9 holes. That's the problem. This area here, this area here is actually a landing area, good golf. And then for the lesser golfers, it's a shot down below, the second shot. This is a highly played area because a lot of second shots here, land here, and a lot of the good golfers can actually be down here. Same thing here, if you're up on top of this hill, a lot of the second shots are going to land up. You're trying not to too much at the actual golf course.
I'm not thinking anything more than a 5 to 7 foot buffer along that water course that would prevent runoff from going straight from the lawn into the stream.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that one, Brian, and I'm glad you were using the pointer and not me, because I could have hit someone behind behind you. But, I mean, we're talking about a pretty small area here. Just adding 10 feet of something other than lawn might be nice.
This is a rough area here, so when you say that, you certainly can't do any bushes or things like that. If this was to change the grade of width of the upper, that's a possibility, but it makes it steeper coming back. Makes it steeper coming back down.
I don't think we're suggesting bushes necessarily, just something that might have a little bit more potential for extracting some of that fertilizer that's probably
Some
hitting the road.
filtration and some retention before the water flows into that, straight from the stream, straight into the stream.
I guess we have to say that this is a highly played area, this whole area on this side. And with the new system that's in place, this is a managed golf course that point source, so to speak, limited fertilization. Because the point application is not like built in, not a lot of capacity. It's one thing that could possibly be done, maybe buffer from the field, have a little bit greater buffer area. It's very highly active golf.
Yeah, we're talking like 5, 10 feet.
From the stream edge.
Yeah, from the street.
If it's a highly played area, what happens in the restored wetlands? Are the balls going to be landing in there?
Not too bad.
And the golfers are going to be going in there and hitting them out?
Question. And unless they said something different, and so like most of the rules, that's what could happen. The way that this is located now, this is one of the areas that can have very limited play, because this is an elevated tee, and most people can get over the other side. So that, you talked about the 98% of balls landing in the cone. This is one of those situations too, where 98% of balls basically not happening.
Well, are people hitting in this direction? They're hitting in that direction.
You have, what you don't really see is you mentioned, this is a low area, and this tee is up probably
Right.
15 feet or so.
But I'm getting a little confused. If this is a heavily played area here, where are the balls coming from?
This is from the other way, it comes down and then turn and go back.
Right, so if you're coming down, you're also coming there, from here.
On this hole here,
Two different-
we're starting from,
No, but look, if he's hitting from here,
well, he actually did it from way down.
all right, he's hitting from way down there. So your 60-degree cone is going to include that area
Yes.
materially. So unless the golf course makes a local rule that says it's in there, it's a shot, sorry.
That's correct.
just a comprehensive approach to how do you prevent runoff into the stream by having a buffer along that entire length. And we're not talking 20 feet deep, we're talking a short planting buffer along the side. I mean, you know what we're trying to accomplish. Yeah, I mean, you know what we're trying to accomplish right now.
Yeah, continuous buffer. Matt, I mean, is there anything you could recommend to the client that you could put in that doesn't interfere with the play, but would help us out a little bit with a buffer for the water course? 10 feet of it, 15 maybe?
Well, we'd like to keep it 5 feet, another 5 feet besides that 10 feet, but, the stream and then the center of it.
And if it is slightly bermed, if the sledders get a real good head of speed up, they can clear the stream.
So we could do something similar, like we have on this irrigation pond edge.
Yeah, that's essentially what we're.
And this would get better perspective of how this place goes down and back. And this is the
Similar to what we see with Vinnie Pond, you know.
yes. So this is the
northern
landing
side,
area
yeah.
for a lot of first and second shot. And the next goal is go up here, and most of the shorter drive and then slope, the better ball. So that's why this is a great area.
Anything else? Additional agency questions regarding what's been presented? Is there public questions or comments in the room on this? No? Take a sense of the agency as whether you feel comfortable we close the hearing at this point?
Yeah.
I'm seeing nods. Excellent. Do we feel that we could make a decision this evening as well, or not? Yeah.
Motion to close the hearing.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Discussion.
I'd like to see the 5 foot on both sides of the water course buffer, but I think the plan in itself is a really good example of restoring, creating, and the square footage that was reeled off in the report is encouraging.
And it was nice to
And in the
have a
plan,
set
I
of
should say.
alternatives
During
presented.
those special.
Yes.
Everyone likes options. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve with the additional condition that a planted buffer is worked out on the exposed waterways. Yeah, well, I'm looking at the other side too. I mean, wherever it makes it's proper. you
These
know.
are conditions that Bob has drafted.
To be worked out with staff.
Have you seen the condition?
These were not distributed to you, so
Okay.
I didn't want to lead you.
Okay, Bob, do you want to give us the rundown of the conditions that you?
They're, well, you guys can.
Did you get a second on your motion?
I'll second it.
Okay,
Thank you. Discussion.
second discussion, along with conditions from Mr. Clausen.
These are all the conditions I could think of that would be applicable in a project of this scope. They include having a pre-site work meeting to look at the installed erosion controls and talk with the compliance staff who's going to be inspecting this about phasing any changes to the plans, things like that. It includes having a erosion and sedimentation log book on site that's maintained and available for inspection, so that we know that they're getting out there before and after large rain events and making required repairs on their own as needed. And it also includes a requirement that an environmental consultant be on-site inspecting the watercourse restoration and wetland mitigation activities during their implementation. And that
The alternatives is not just a narrative, but they are meant to have sketches submitted, so just to be sure, not just a narrative.
Public questions or comments? Okay. May I have a motion?
Motion to delay.
Second?
Second.
So moved. Hearing remains open. Okay. Next up is application 2019-156, 120 Tomac Avenue, Hagney, Lennon, and Slane LLP for Innis Arden Golf Club, Inc., for demolition and reconstruction of a clubhouse, parking area, and site improvements within and adjacent to wetlands. Mr. Quasi, please.
All right. Since January 27th, when the hearing opened, we've received, at that hearing, a printout of the PowerPoint presentation made by the applicant's representatives and a handout of 3 alternatives, which was presented to the agency by Mr. Leonard DeAndrea. Various email correspondence between staff and the applicant's representatives, January 30th through February 4th. A letter with attachment regarding summary of alternatives, additional information, alternative 3, prepared by Rocco V. DeAndrea Incorporated and signed by Leonard DeAndrea. A plan entitled Grading Plan, New Clubhouse East Side Improvement, Innis Arden Golf Club Incorporated, which is a DeAndrea plan certified by Derek Donnet, and that was dated February 12th. A plan entitled IWWA Mitigation Plan, prepared by Environmental Land Solutions, LLC, certified by Matthew Pop, dated February 13th, and a proposed landscape planting plan prepared by Rogers McCaig Architects and certified by William Rutherford. This was dated February 12th. Let's see. The applicant has responded to the concerns raised at the first public hearing session and as follows. There were outstanding questions about alternatives that had been considered, specifically why the new clubhouse can't be built where the existing clubhouse stands. The February 12th letter with attachment submitted by Mr. DeAndrea indicate that this alternative would entail a certain amount of wetland loss. So whereas the applicant's preferred plan does include wetland loss, this plan would also include some, although the area is not quantified. And it would also require relocation of 100 feet of watercourse. The other issue that is of great concern to the club is that portions of the building and outdoor spaces used by the club members would be located where balls driven off the first and the 18th tees might land, which the club's golf course architect finds to be an unacceptable hazard. This design would also require the continued use of the wetland to the east of the first tee to stage golf carts during certain club activities. There's some photographs that were submitted and they were in your packets of showing golf carts. Well, they're right there on the flip chart right there, lined up all across that lawn wetland. Regarding alternatives, Mr. DeAndrea's letter stresses that the compact design of the proposed clubhouse reduces structural coverage compared to existing conditions. It accommodates golf cart storage, cart maintenance operations, and the pro shop on its lower level, and also includes, their proposal includes mitigation. And the mitigation uh, is the next item that was outstanding from last month's hearing. The applicant was directed to prioritize their proposal to mitigate the 9,950 square feet of lawn wetland that will be lost with the construction of the proposed clubhouse in the order of restore, enhance, and create productive wetlands. They were specifically directed to consider other areas of wetlands that can be restored and opportunities to provide shade along the watercourse. So the revised plan I mentioned before, which Mr. Pop has just put on the flip chart, shows an additional 6,200 square feet of lawned wetland adjacent to the watercourse on the third fairway to be restored. This is in addition to over 11,000 square feet of wetland and watercourse restoration that was originally proposed. They also are proposing to restore 5,700 square feet of, also proposing to create 5,700 square feet of wetland. So the wetland restoration and wetland creation creates an area over twice what the area of wetland loss is going to be. In addition, there's buffer restoration, and the revised plan increases the area of buffer restoration, almost doubling it. This has been a pretty substantial increase in the mitigation the applicant's offering for the wetland impacts. They're also proposing to increase the amount of shade along the watercourse by shifting several shad bush that were previously shown further back from the water body to the stream bank, and planting 4 black gum trees and a red maple near the watercourse. So those are the applicant's responses. The agency, according to the regulations, section 10.3, this application will have a significant impact on a wetland with the wetland filling and loss. So a permit, quote, shall not be issued unless the agency finds on the basis of the record that a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist. I've listed a couple of the criteria from section 10.2. These are the criteria for decision that I think are most applicable in this case. We can discuss those if you want. I think the applicant has addressed them to an extent or another with their presentation. And I think this application is pretty complete unless there are issues that the agency has or the public raise.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Welcome, Mr. Hagan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the record, Tom Hagley on behalf of the applicant. As Mr. Clausen has indicated in his staff report, we've taken the comments that we heard at the January meeting and have revised the plan, enhanced buffers to increase the amount of wetland restoration, and provided examples of why this is the appropriate location for the new clubhouse. I would add not only the photographs showing that the wetland area that we're looking to build on has been used as the staging area for tournaments for the carts that are used by the members, but if you look at the aerial photograph that's next to your office, 100 years ago it was lawn just to his down. This is not one of the more pristine wetlands that the agency looks to protect and enhance. We think that we have come up with a plan that does in fact improve the wetland function.
And so we would ask the agency that You approve the permit without the vegetation.
Agency discussion? I mean, I do feel that it makes sense to have buffers along water courses in order to protect them. So I'm not inclined to waive that condition of approval. Perhaps there's the possibility to go a narrower thing, but it is a wetland that's maintained as long.
Well, that hasn't been there since we've been there, which is
Right.
35 years, 30 years, and the house was built in 1947. I don't know what was there before that, but
Probably a farm.
There's something, agency's 2015 mitigation planting guidelines. That was from something, so there should be plants there,
No,
No?
no, no, there should, I mean, this is a guidelines for it to assist staff and applicants to understand
Oh, of
types
course,
of things that we expect to go in when, if there's a violation, it has to be corrected, or if there's mitigation suggested, recommended, offered.
Gotcha.
I don't think there's any violation in place.
No, sir, it's not a violation.
No.
Yeah. I share the chairman's, I mean, I'm looking at the pictures, I don't want to talk and look at the same time. Yeah, you know, having a buffer on these wet water courses is really beneficial. Why were you opposed to it exactly?
It's never been there.
Just because it's never been there,
Yeah.
but you understand that it would be beneficial to the.
But if we
the
were
wetland,
not to
the water
change the
course.
pool, it's not going in.
If you don't change the pool, then you wouldn't be putting it in, that's right.
That's right.
Which is
So you'd
the
rather
flip
not-
side.
You'd rather not change the pool in order not to put in a planted.
No, I think we can be more reasonable than,
So what would more reasonable be in your mind?
well, we're going to make a smaller pool. We make a, I
Oh,
don't,
well, yeah, I don't think the size of the pool is the issue. It's more the creating a buffer for the stream, for
Sure.
the overall health
sure.
of that strip as well as downstream. So is a 5-foot planted
What was,
buffer?
Mr. Clausen, what were you
This
proposing?
is actually wetland.
This is a wetland.
Yes, part of it is vegetating the wetland.
Right,
Yeah.
sorry, so
And it's,
shading.
I mean, we'd look at the neighboring property, and when they redevelop aspects of their property, this was, we require planting, yeah. So it's not suggesting that what you have there is a violation now. It's suggesting that decisions were made in the history of your property that we know better today than we did back then.
Sure.
So when applications come in, we look to mitigate for those past decisions in conjunction with a new decision. So you're upgrading the pool, which is a fine thing to do, and likewise upgrade the protection of the water course. So,
What- Is there a standard that you,
You typically require.
yes, so I think
situations like this.
Bob referenced in his staff report, so it's a planting station every 15 feet on center, and the reference was there's an 1,800 square foot area. How many planting stations? 8 stations. So that consists of 1 tree per station or 3 to 5 shrubs per station. So it's not a big undertaking.
So,
eight stations? And what makes up a station?
We can provide you with the
Guidance.
standard, so you don't have to worry about writing it down.
Okay,
Yeah,
One
it's
tree or
referenced in
3
the
shrubs.
the staff report.
okay, well, maybe we can take that under consideration.
Well, I will
Well,
make,
it actually wouldn't be a
it
consideration.
would be a requirement.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to approve your permit with the conditions stated by staff, which is the planting plans that you can discuss with staff. They can tell you what would be required.
Okay,
All right?
thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Oh, here's your pictures too. Sorry.
Next
Thank you.
is 2020-005, 52 John Street, the pond and lake connection for Robert and Elizabeth Berner for treatment and removal of invasive plants from wetlands. Mr. Clausy, please.
All right. When I went out to this site, the area shown for Phragmites removal on the plan is more extensive than what I found. I found about 1,000 square feet, which is about a tenth of what the area shown on the plan. But I guess some of the work had been done already, and that was kind of why the application was made. So the applicant, basically, in my understanding of this now, wants to complete the removal of the Phragmites. This small portion of the Phragmites that's left is very easy to access from an existing wood road, and is separated from the wetland and the pond by a shrubby planting that includes some other invasive species that the applicant is encouraged to remove. And there's some nice mountain laurel in there that could be released if the honeysuckle, multiflora rose, and Japanese barberry are taken out. Let's see, I made a comment about erosion controls, comment about not composting this Phragmites roots and rhizomes, but disposing of them so that they're not spread to new locations. Coming up with a planting plan that specifies native woody and herbaceous species rather than, quote, a selection of ornamental grasses and woody and herbaceous plants of, not specified. And some work that has to be done to patch up some eroded areas both in the project area, and while I'm on a site, I go and I look at all the water courses, all the wetlands. And on the other side of the property, there is a water course, and the soils around that water course look like they've been disturbed as well. Maybe it's just planting bed that's dormant for the winter. I don't know, but I think erosion controls are needed on that side until that area is stabilized. So I have conditions that incorporate all these comments. I recommend the agency issue a permit.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here from the applicant? Anything you want to add, comment on?
Good evening, sorry. I just wanted to,
Your name, please.
my name's Ryan, I'm sorry.
All right.
First
last
time
name?
doing this. Dexter,
Ryan Dexter. All right, welcome.
thank you. We have no issues with the special conditions. I am working with the Burners to create a planting plan. This December 22nd, 2015 mitigation planting plan, was unsure what that actually, those guidelines entail.
We can send you a copy if you remind me.
Okay.
Or I'll write it down, I'll remind myself.
All right, I'll shoot you an email. I think that's it. I think this is reasonable and can be attained. Thank
Very
you.
good. Is there a motion? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, we have a question.
Phragmites growth is often associated with disturbance of soil and other pollutants and so on. Do you have any idea what might have
Cause?
caused it? And is there
No
any
idea. We just started working with the Burners this past year. We have no idea what kind of activity was. Obviously, they're having construction done this past year, but I have no idea what went on that slope side prior to our.
Because if such disturbance is eliminated, then you probably in trouble. That's why it might be the elevation changed slightly.
I have no idea. Thank you.
Anything else? Nope. Is there a motion? Motion to approve. Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next Meadowcroft Lane, Rocco v. Deandra for Paparazzo LLC for construction of a single-family residence, driveway, septic system, drainage, and landscaping 10 feet from wetlands.
All right, this site was visited by Mr. Benton, Ms. Curlin, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Rossi, and Mr. Schoendorf. All right, this agency looked at this property back in sort of the fall of last year regarding a dredging. They wanted to do a dredge portion of the lake. That permit was issued. At that time, I noted for the agency that this lot had been cleared of the house, pool, and other improvements that used to stand here. All of those improvements were more than 100 feet from the wetlands, so that was just a green sheet sign-off. Now the applicant would like to redevelop the property with a house and a lot of nice amenities. Of these activities, only the pool house, deck, and a part of the septic and stormwater management systems are within the upland review area. So, this is a big project, but pretty well removed from the wetlands and the pond. Let's see. So there are some things missing from the application, specifically alternatives considered but subsequently rejected, and the biological narrative. The outdoor living area is proposed 10 feet from the edge of the wetland, and it is shown within the buffer area that was to be restored as part of the dredging project. I met with Mr. DeAndrea earlier this week, and the contractor and their environmental consultant, and we've discussed maybe an alternative location, which I think would be more satisfactory to me, and maybe he has something to share with us tonight. Let's see. Construction sequencing, phasing, again, was something I discussed with Mr. DeAndrea and the other folks earlier this week. I think that's required on this project, so that, the fact that it's far away, it's also up a slope, so we have to know how it's going to be staged, and especially with phase-specific erosion control measures. And measures that are adequate for this site could include a need to divert clean water around the property. Water comes onto the property from the northwest, and we've had a pretty nasty erosion issue on a property being redeveloped at the other side of the cul-de-sac. So I wouldn't want to see any, uncontrolled. I want the applicant to put the thought into the erosion control program on the front end, not patch it up as they're chasing sediment washing into this pond. So I think there are a couple things need to be taken care of. Would recommend a delay on this, and hopefully all the outstanding application matters will be submitted in a timely manner.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Real quick summary of what Bob and I discussed. We have been working now since our discussions to modify the location of the recreation area. Sometimes in our discussions of alternatives, I know that the agency appreciates it. Sometimes, no matter what we can tell a client, they don't want to believe it until they hear it from you. So we've accomplished one objective. And I hope you understand that aspect of our job. We have since, however, convinced them that the preservation of the tree near the recreation area is important, and that we're going to move that patio, which is actually a deck on the slope, so it's up off the ground will be moved up. It's actually down into the southwest, but we're moving it up and away from the area where it's currently proposed. A good aspect of this plan is that we'll be able to work with the landscape architects from Argentina to include our rain garden on the west side of the home as a functional aspect of their landscaping. So that was an accomplishment that we were able to gain. We are aware of the water from the northwest corner of the property. I know that's where our septic system is, so we've created a berm to divert the water. The other good aspect of the plan, while there will be some disruption of the site because we're going to clean it up and regrade that western portion, you can see that a majority of the property is left in basically a natural state. We're able to preserve trees in that area. We have proposed basically a bocce court on the north side of the home. Whether or not that gets built remains to be seen, but we wanted to let it be part of the plan so that you can anticipate the impact of that. We've accommodated that in our drainage design, of course, and it's also well outside the 100-foot upland review area. So fine-tuning that we're doing, it will be done within the next couple of days. And we have been also responding to some minor comments from DPW. So those things will all be refined, relocate the deck, and we hope that we can resolve this all at the end of March. If there are any other concerns at this point, I think it's also nice to note that the house that's being proposed is right back where the original house was, in the very same area. Down to the southeast is where the septic system originally was. It was marginal in size, so we're rebuilding it now on the upper portions of the northwest corner, but all the activities are concentrated in where the prior location was. And also, the lower level is set to meet the grade at that location, and the upper level meets the elevation on the western side. So it's a minimal amount of earthwork. So all in all, I think it's a good plan taking shape.
Is part of your planting plan will be any sort of restoration on the edge of
We're
ponds?
actually living with, or staying with the plan that the agency approved for the restoration of that. So on the current plans, you'll see those delineations on the plan. They're not on that now. So we've incorporated that into our landscape plan. So what was approved to restore the area after the dredging will be included on the plan. All right?
Any questions for Mr. DeAndrea from the agency? Public questions or comments?
I'm curious, Bob, why didn't you recommend denial based on the fact that it's incomplete?
I didn't recommend denial.
I said, why didn't you?
Because I don't, okay, my feeling about people who make applications is they bought a ticket, they get regular reports are submitted to agency staff, so we have eyes, extra pair of eyes on the project in a crucial time. And other than that, it's pretty much everything you'd need in a project like this.
Okay. Do you have a frequency of reporting from the wetlands?
Once every 2 weeks during the actual implementation. So
Okay.
as they're restoring the water course, excavating for the wetland creation, and doing the mitigation planting installation, those would be the times that we want the reports.
Just last one thing.
Please.
Would it be
Yes, two
possible
things.
to add something there in terms of what the superintendent does for application of fertilizers and pesticides? My suspicion is he's very, very careful about doing that, but I'd be very interested to see just advanced documentation.
Just ask that a protocol be filed with the wetlands agency.
So we have a sense.
Okay, I have a question about special condition number 12, which is a bit amorphous. Since
Well,
it's
this is, okay, I wasn't sure whether I needed to add this. I mean, a golf course is going to make sure that the soil surface is porous because they're trying to grow turf. I mean, a lot of people who build houses around here. They run the machinery around the site, compact everything, and then throw it 2 inches of topsoil on it, think they're going to grow grass. It doesn't work. These guys are going to do it, so
No, just for my own edification, Bob, it's left in such a way that it's, when you say such as the Virginia, it leaves the choice of guideline to the developer. Shouldn't we be better off specifying what guidelines should be used?
I think if they used a guideline that was inadequate, we would say to them, that's not what we meant. We didn't mean 2 inches of topsoil on compacted ground.
I think that such as gives the frame of reference of the standard that we're shooting for. I don't know that the Virginia design is word for word appropriate for this project or any of our projects, but it does give a level of care that's expected.
Accepting that the golf course is going to take particular care of the turf, whatever they're growing there. If we use this again, I would like to see a specification that is more exact than such as.
What about such as or similar to?
Well, there may be wording in the town drainage manual that gets at the same point about, so we'll look into it.
Okay, thank you. Apart from that,
You're good? Okay. So we have a motion with the 2 additional items added.
Also, in the discussion, include your findings, fees of prudent alternatives, your obligation, statutes again.
that what we are presented with is the most prudent and feasible alternative that we have seen. So found.
So found? Okay. Very good. Any other discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Next up is application 2020-010, 306 Brownsville Road, SC Minor and Company, Inc., and Eric Brower, AICP for Christopher Pollock, for maintenance of dam, dry hydrant, and installation of restoration plantings within wetlands and water courses. Mr. Clausy, please.
I was informed that Mr. Benton, Ms. Curlin, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Rossi, and Mr. Schoendorf visited the site during the special meeting last Friday. Documents in the file include the completed application, supporting documentation signed by applicant's agent Lawrence Liebman of SC Minor and Company. This is dated January 24th. A plan entitled Proposed Wetland Restoration and Mitigation, certified by Peter Finkbeiner of SC Minor and Company, dated December 3rd, 2019. A partial topographic survey certified by Roy Carey of SC Minor, dated December 9th, 2019. Completed dam registration form received by the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection up in Hartford on January 9th, 2020. Soils report prepared by William Kenny Associates, certified by William Kenny, soil scientist, December 4th, 2019. The public hearing legal notice, which was dated January 29th, and the list of abutters who were mailed notification of the public hearing on February 2nd. Email correspondence between staff and Steve Gephardt of the Connecticut Deep Fisheries Division, January 10th and 11th. There's the emails. And email correspondence between staff and Brian Golombeski, supervisor of the Connecticut Deep Land and Water Resources Enforcement Section, January 10th. A copy of a letter to Mr. and Mrs. Pollock from Yvonne Hall, professional engineer at the Connecticut Deep Dam Safety Program, dated December 9th. Letter from to the Pollocks from IWWA Compliance Officer Doreen Carol Andrews, dated November 27th. Email correspondence between staff, Yvonne Hall and Anna Laskin, who's another civil engineer in the Dam Safety Program at Connecticut Deep. These were emails November 20th through the 25th. Field investigation notes prepared by me and Assistant Compliance Officer Jennifer Urena, dated November 22nd. Violation summary regarding cease and correct order 2019-19 that I prepared on November 20th. Cease and correct order, which was addressed to Christopher and Elizabeth Pollock on November 20th, with a copy sent to Corona Masonry Work LLC. And the notice of violation stop work order issued on site to a representative of Mr. Pollock on November 20th. I'd also add that I clipped into the file a copy of an American Rivers called the Ecology, published by American Rivers, called The Ecology of Dam Removal, a Summary of Benefits and Impacts. And I believe that's it, yes. All right, November 2019. This is a major violation. I was stunned when I walked over to the edge of the hill and looked down on the east branch of the Byram River. There is a crew in the wetland. They built 2 temporary bridges across the brook. They were working, mortaring up the dam. They had a machine in the wetland. They had cleared and grubbed the wetland. No erosion controls. It was a disaster. Luckily the brook wasn't, flooding or something at that point.
First condition of approval, soil and erosion controls, including the gravel filter strip, to be wholly on the subject property at elevation 16 or higher, and at least 10 feet from the house foundation.
Okay. Okay, well, my feeling is that with the conditions of approval, and the good suggestions that I think you made for modifying the distance from the wetlands, that I can support this application. I'm not sure how the rest of us feel. So I'll make a motion to approve with the additional conditions discussed prior with regards to the roof deck, the further detailing of the level spreader on the northern property, and the last one.
The phasing plan revision,
And the phasing plan.
and then modifying 16 for the inspection
And
frequency.
modifying 16 for the inspection protocol.
Let's second that.
Okay, very good. All in favor? Against? Acceptance?
What do you think?
Do we have
He's saying
a-
all in favor.
All in favor on this?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, very good. And Mr. Lindroth, are you?
I said aye.
You said aye? Okay. It passes. Very good. Okay, next up is 2019-147, 279 Taconic Road. SC Minor and Company, Inc. for Valerie and Tatiana Goldberg for construction of a gatehouse retaining wall and permeable drive 11.7 feet from wetlands. Mr. Clausen, please.
All right, I'm sorry the agenda wasn't updated to reflect the most recent plan. This was a plan that was submitted last week, and that plan shows, as we sort of suggested to the applicant, why not put this garage up near the house? So the garage has been relocated from its two very close proximity locations to wetlands to this northwest corner of the property, 140 feet from the wetlands. I therefore recommend the agency issue a permit with conditions provided in the staff report.
Okay, thank you.
Larry Liebman representing the applicant. We have no issues with what's in the staff report. We're in front of Zoning Board of Appeals on Wednesday.
Okay, so you consider this approved and feasible alternative?
This is the feasible, yes,
Yep.
Pretty much.
Just checking.
yes, sir.
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Good night.
No, I have three more.
Okay, on to the new stuff. 2020-002, Vista Drive, SC Minor and Company, Inc. for Indian Harbor Homeowners, Association for pipe replacement abutting a wetland. Mr. Clausen, please.
Okay. There's an 18-inch corrugated metal pipe that's failed, runs under Vista Drive from 19 Lakewood Circle South to the northeast corner of 2 Vista Drive. The pipe replacement will be done by diverting the water course around the work zone via pumped bypass, and the applicant thinks this project will take about 2 weeks to complete. The first special condition recommended in the staff report is that we get consent letters from the owners of 2 Vista Drive and 19 Lakewood Circle before any work starts. There has been some correspondence from the attorney representing the owners of 2 Vista Drive expressing concern. The most recent email, and I was going to pass those out, but I'm just going to tell you the most recent email from their attorney says, my client will work with the association to seek a resolution of the issue. If they don't get the consent, no work can take place on that property, and maybe the project can't happen, but that's kind of between the applicant and their property owner. The work, I'd say 95% of the work is in the right-of-way. Maybe 5% is on 2 properties. The association made the application. The assumption was they had everybody on board, so I just relayed to the agent that they needed to get the consent, and Mr. Lieben's here.
Project will not go forward if there's no consent.
Correct.
Larry Liebman representing the applicant, which is the Homeowners Association. We have no objection to things that are written and the recommendations as stated in the staff report, especially number 1.
Okay. Very good. Any agency questions for Mr. Levy? Public questions or comments? Someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Moving on to the next. 2020-003, 5 Ridgeview Avenue, Ocean North Pool, LLC, for Lynn B. Auk, for demolition and construction of a pool 78 feet from wetlands. Mr. Clausen, please.
Right. There's an existing pool behind the house at 5 Ridgeview Avenue. The applicant proposed to demo this pool and put a new rectangular pool in the ground. The pool is about 80 feet from the on-site wetlands. And there's really, this should be a very straightforward project to implement. The only thing I found on the property was that the wetland in the, let's say, northeast corner of the site, it's sort of bisected by a water course. It's not shown on the plan. The wetland on the house side of the water course is maintained as lawn. And, this is in contrast to the other side of the water course, which is maintained in a natural state, and the wetland and buffer on 9 Ridgeview, which was restored according to approvals given by the agency for redevelopment of that property. I'm recommending the agency require a restoration of a 15-foot wide strip of the lawn wetland along the west side of the water course in order to sort of bring this site into similar conformity with its abutting property. And that would be about 1,800 square feet. It would require 8 planting stations of trees or shrubs according to the agency's mitigation planting guidelines. It's not a very big deal.
Very good. Please, sir.
Mr. Chairman, agency members, my name is Skip Auk. The house is in my wife's name, Lynn. And it is our intent to demolish and reconstruct our pool there, make it smaller from what it is currently. I have a couple of pictures here that might give you a better sense of what we're talking about here. But we've been in that house for 32 years now, and the construction and the landscaping, the vegetation has not changed over that period of time. And perhaps this will be helpful to you.
15% slope. There's a lot of rock outcroppings on the slope. The slope is kind of uniform, so I mean, if the channel fails to contain the flows, there could be sedimentation to the eastern portion of the on-site water course, impairment to drainage structures connecting the property to the Byram River, or adverse impacts to abutting properties downslope. This is a design that needs to be done by a qualified engineer and depicted clearly on a plan. This is similar to what we need to see for this boulder wall proposed along the edge of the emergent wetland. We don't have any clue how this wall is going to be constructed, how it will accommodate the flow. Is the flow going to go over it, going to go through it? Is it going to have a weir? Is it, what's the deal? Now, I would note that Mr. Marucci, who's a civil engineer, in his February 20th comments also said the proposed water course from the proposed head wall will require a much more detailed design. The design must be a proper channel to convey the storm events. The design must incorporate ponding areas with drops to dissipate the energy and velocities. So for this design, we need a lot more information. The drainage report, similarly to the plans, combines both properties and compares the pre-development and post-development information. Both properties are proposed with porous asphalt driveways over stone reservoirs, and each is proposed with a Coltec infiltration gallery behind the house. The drainage report states the stormwater systems will reduce peak runoff rates and volumes to the points of concern along the eastern property line through the 100-year storm, which is more than the drainage manual requires, which is the controlling up to the 25-year storm. But Mr. Marucci, again, is asking for more information to kind of verify that this is actually going to be the case. Now, the existing watercourse channel up near the house has eroded banks, so even though it's not a requirement, according to the drainage manual, I think the stream channel protection standard of the drainage manual should be applied to this project because the water coming down out of that pipe into this watercourse has enough flow to erode the banks. The stream channel protection standard will help to compensate for that and protect either the existing stream banks or the proposed stream banks going forward. Okay, so that's all I'm going to go into now. We need the alternatives. I recommend the agency delay this application, but note that failure to provide the alternatives in a timely manner may lead to the denial of this application as incomplete for section 8.6 and 12.2 of the 11.2 of the regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Is there anyone here from the applicant?
Brian Muller, professional engineer, state executive, here representing the applicant and value engineer. We are going to be working diligently over the next month to bring in an additional alternative that was supposed to be submitted that didn't have to be submitted, as well as all of Scott Murphy's comments. I have a meeting with him on Wednesday. We'll discuss all of this. Overall, his comments were pretty decent. Basically, no comments on the drainage systems for the proposed houses or so just the new stream channel, which is proposed to be not any deeper than the existing stream channel downstream. The existing stream channel is really terrible. It has the pipe comes out and basically discharges straight into the bank. It creates scouring and erosion, as you noted. So that needs to be reworked no matter what. Things should be noted too that an alternative would also be included on that. So we'll take the delay and we'll come back next month with answering all the questions that provide staff report. And if there's any additional comments, I'd like to hear it so we can address those as well.
Yeah, I just have one question. When you're doing the rental calculations, I mean, what is the boundary for the calculation? This is the road is picking up a lot of water from all over the hill and up and down and so on. So how do they pick the boundary to do the calculation?
So right now, the drainage report is concentrated just on the property limits. So
That's not good. I'm sorry, but in this case, I don't see that because that drain picks up stuff from a lot of different places. And if you don't take that into account,
yeah,
it's
part of
garbage.
It's not garbage, that's the law, and that's what the stormwater manual requires. It doesn't state stormwater manual to do
Well,
the
okay,
upstream
if that-
watershed analysis. We're decreasing peak flows through the 100-year storm event for this entire, both of these properties combined. We are going to analyze the upstream watershed for those two catch basins, and I like that, it's only two. It's not the whole road, it's just in this portion of Big Creek Drive. We will analyze the upstream properties that drain to these catch basins, gather the flows, gather the velocities, decide and determine and design a stream bank that can handle those velocities, as well as the pipe downstream at 38-inch RCP, which we'll be running the existing models too, so we'll see how it handles some of the 1,300-year storms under the current conditions, see if they break the bank or not. So
Just want to be sure I understand, you're proposing to relocate this watercourse, but you're not doing a full watershed analysis of that watercourse?
we're not really changing, we're making the new watercourse better than what's existing, is what we're doing. So we will analyze the whole existing watershed in that area.
Okay, not just the property, that was, you're speaking just to,
Just to the requirements for us to,
for the pervious
Yeah.
driveway and the infiltrator.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. With
So
regards to
will
the
the
watercourse.
alternatives that we see include one where the stream is not relocated?
And the answer is, what if you build on the existing footprint? Which leaves the stream exactly where it is. Yes, I did. No, I walked the outside. Yeah. I didn't say keep the structure, I said keep the footprint. Yeah. No, the stream would stay where it is.
We're gonna analyze the whole watershed to the outlet pipe, right? And how it hits that bank.
And you can fix the bank and leave the stream where it is. It's a lovely little stream. Maybe so, but it's extant. And destroying streams that are extant is not a good thing to do.
Have you thought of areas for front yard setback?
We're looking into all the possibilities.
I have a comment. As you look at all the possibilities, I'd like you to consider the possibility of cutting a smaller number of trees, those mature trees in those lots.
To level a tennis court, because this is only 6 feet wide, immediately adjacent to the septic leaching field. Construction sequence would be good to have, especially at the point at which the western retaining wall will be built. Regarding the well, well drilling can be very, very messy. How is the slurry from the well going to be handled so it doesn't end up in that pond? And let's see, DPW has completed its review of the drainage proposal and finds it acceptable in concept. None of their comments are anything that I think the agency needs to be concerned about, so there will be additional information required, but nothing that we need to see necessarily before an approval if one were to be granted. So we may get some answers tonight from Mr. Liebman, but I think there's some other things that need documents to be submitted, and I recommend the agency delay this.
Thank you, Bob.
Hi, I apologize for the tardiness of getting everything back to Bob, but I have answers to all of the 6 comments that he makes. The first is the previous application had the split rail fence. Now, if I can learn how to use your pointer,
The other way.
that would help.
There we go.
The previous application had the demarcation feature running up 24 feet higher than what it was. When I met first with staff about going to talk about this, then what was told was, okay, what we do is we do a kind of like an area of equal exchange of upland review area to be planted. There's 3,451 square feet of additional area, and then we are giving back of 3,451 feet of lawn. So there is a lawn reduction. The well, we show the well to be right here. I tried to look and see about getting the well. The only place that's 75 feet away from any of the septic system is right there. And then there would have to be a trench that goes all the way up to get water to the house. So I figured that since we were working in this area to get in it, to do it, that we would place the well and we would be able to landscape around it. The reason of coming in this way versus coming in this way with all the material allows the applicant to build the western wall first, which is what we really want to do, because once that wall is up in the air and everything else happens above it, then we don't impact, then we minimize the potential impact to the wetland resource. So we would build the western wall and the northern wall first, and then work down and put the fill in and do that. I have that written down as far as a construction sequence of where it is, and I plan on giving that in the final construction drawing to staff once it's approved. Should this, and I'm calling for this well that's over here to be pounded, not to be drilled, okay? So that this way then there isn't slurry that has to come out. If it can't be pounded, for whatever reason, then a dirt bag system will be, I will add that to the plan, saying that a dirt bag, that's the people we employ, thanks. That's, okay, a dirt bag is a geotextile that goes to make it work, okay?
Let's go on.
Okay, the additional planting which will include both trees and shrubs, will meet the minimum guideline setbacks for the minimum guidelines that's set forth as staff wanted. If you allow me to submit a planting plan with the phasing plan on it, and you approve this, then we can move forward. I am in front of, Zoning Board of Appeals is already done with this one. They've already granted the variance because of us from our previous conversations.
Okay.
So if we include all that stuff in the conditions of approval,
Yes, sir. And then it'll all be taken, I'm stating that for the record, that we will do all of the, we will increase the plants, and we will meet with staff beforehand, put the construction sequence on, state where the well is and what the slurry pit is going to be. Yes, it'll all be submitted post haste.
I would want to make sure that the area of lawn that you're giving up
Is going to be either equal to or greater than the exchange. Yes, sir.
so there's not, well, and also just that it's planted in such a way where it's not going to revert back to.
Oh, it's not going to be, because there's going to be the fence that's going to be blocking it off, and then this is going to be like a demarcation wall over that way. If you look at, can you switch to the planting plan, Doreen?
Yeah.
Can you switch to the planting plan, please?
You should note that the members on Friday's site walk we went to this site as well.
yeah, I remember.
Put it in the record.
There we go. You see, so this area here is already wooded. We're not going to take down trees to put in trees. Thank you very much. This area, and what I've even done is I've planted, I show that what we're going to do, all of this planting was part of the previous application and the restoration of the landscape debris that was on the property. This planting in here is all in open lawn that's going to be taken out of lawn. The split rail fence is here. I even put units in front of the split rail fence, so that this way then we have the split rail fence and plantings in front of it. And then if we need to increase some of the plantings in this area, so be it. We'll do it to meet the setback, to meet the guidelines.
Give me the lawn area that's going.
Oh, all of this area that's in here, that's lawn area that's going to be removed.
And that diagonal line we see going through the.
This diagonal line is because the wood line is there. I don't know, I know you can't see it, but the existing tree line is right here. There's an existing,
The heavier line that runs through the.
that's the 100-foot upland review area. That's what gave me this area. That's how I did it. I added the 100-foot upland review area and did an area of equal exchange.
How do you have that much energy?
CBD gummies, right?
Do you think at this point we would
Okay,
have beaten
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This area is going to be restored,
Pardon?
this area here,
That's existing woods.
that's existing. wood.
That's existing woods. So we're leaving that alone. If we need to, if you'd like me to take some additional plantings and supplement in there, we can. But if I've always been told, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So don't go in there, don't take out any trees and go in there. I mean, we could add some understory.
And the demarcation
That was an area that was restored under the previous application because of a large debris pile.
See, what I'm trying to deal with is knowing the way I play tennis, there would be a lot of balls out here somewhere.
Well, there's going to be a fence on top of the wall, right? I mean, most tennis courts have a 10-foot fence, a 10-foot high fence, according to, and that was approved by Zoning Board of Appeals. So I'm sorry if you lob them too much, but you have to keep the spin down.
Good at golf. That's what our takeaway for tonight.
Athletics is not my strong suit.
Very good.
How many trees are going to be removed in order to put in the tennis court? And how many, in addition to that, how many trees are going to possibly be adversely affected by the
Well, but they're going to try to, what's not shown there is screening planting that they're going to maintain.
No, but that doesn't answer my question. How many trees
Oh, 11.
are going to be removed?
11, yes.
13?
On the decking itself,
Mm-hmm.
that captures that, so you don't have this potential scoring of the area.
You're below,
underneath
yep.
The deck and on that steep slope. It would get routed back to, I don't have the plan, say where it would go to, but that would be something that would be presented later.
So everything presently is routed back to the pervious driveway up front.
Right.
So that's your expectation, is this deck would have to go there too?
If we're looking to avoid the impacts to the wetland via the failure of the vegetation underneath the deck, in the shade of the deck, and the overhanging structures. This assumes, of course, the other changes that you put in your conditions.
But can we do that? I mean, we have an application before us that I thought at this point, since it's not a violation, we have an application that we either have to accept or deny.
No, you can condition, yes, it is perfectly acceptable to condition an approval. In fact, we do it pretty much all the time when we say restoration plans need to be revised for testimony, or add this or add that. This is unusual as from what we see and don't see, but yes, the agency is definitely within your authority to condition an approval.
Anything down at this end, thoughts?
I mean, so taking stuff from the, flow from the deck and putting it back up towards the driveway, is that what you said? A
Well,
retention back up towards the driveway?
Director Sesto was saying one of the concerns is the overflow from the
Yeah.
deck.
Well, I caught that.
Or if it's a slatted deck, the fact that between the shading underneath, the potential failure of the vegetation under that deck, that would be, the inundation of the water would create erosion or
Yes, so
scour.
I definitely understood that part. Is there someone
So it's a
with the
question-
applicant that can
Well,
confirm, like
no,
an
at
engineer?
this point,
We
at this
can't
point, no,
say
it would be
that?
a
Okay.
condition that would be worked out
Okay.
with staff.
Gotcha.
Um,
Hence,
but
no one
it-
up there is talking about, right, got it. I just wanted to hear from the engineer if they thought they could actually do
Engineers can do anything
it. That's, okay.
within
I must tell you, I am concerned about making a condition that is so significant in terms of redesign and trying to make that stick. It's one thing to say you've got to submit a planting plan that we approve. It's something else to say, I think, that you have to redesign the drainage system for the deck. It seems like a much, much more significant kind of redesign that we're asking for.
So I'll try to put myself in the applicant's position for the moment, that I would rather, if we're talking about an approval with a condition to fix this concern, or a denial and come back with a new application to fix the concern, I'd rather have the approval to try to fix the concern. Worst case is they can't fix the concern, and they have to come back anyway.
Well, or if I were the applicant, I would take the approval and then sue you.
Okay.
Been done too?
Yeah.
You know, Anyway,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're proposing plantings under the deck, right? So the water coming through the slats is actually important for the plants under the deck. And if there's a condition in here, I haven't seen the conditions, but say a 2-year hold on the plant, a bond for the plantings, that's going to be a time when you're likely to see erosion starting because the ground is freshly disturbed, plants are freshly
Agree.
installed. I mean, you can retrofit it within that period with stone berm to catch the concentrated flows and dissipate it again. I'm just trying to think what alternative there would be to guttering and the deck, which you can do if you want to do.
or you could, I guess you could gutter it and then just run it back down. You've got a sump fundamentally underneath the house, which is where the driveway drains. So you could, rather than taking it all the way up to the driveway, just pipe it right into that.
One of the early concerns about that, if you remember the gutters, the east side of the house, we're going to go in there, three that can go with them, and there's no access to that area. Fundamentally, no access. I think you can go and blow it out or something.
Yeah, there was an access.
Yeah, but it was
wasn't
it was
man-
limited. That was one of the
It
big
wasn't a man-
concerns.
it was just a-
So the section underneath the house is only utilized when the storm flows exceed the 100-year storm and the driveway is overwhelmed. So it's a don't use too often scenario.
Okay.
Any other agency thoughts?
I don't recall, if we're tracking towards an approval, I would like the level spreader for the existing lot. Yeah, there's a piece that needs to be revisited. And I do not have that as a condition of approval. I'm sorry? It was expressed. It's the third bullet on the first page. So a condition of approval would be to provide further detailings with further topography and examination of the wall that's missing from the plan, to be sure things stay diffused.
That's a level spreader on the northern property.
Yes. Yes. Yep, so I've got the phasing plan needs to be revised in phase 1. 18 is to capture the runoff from the deck and send it to detention system, preferably to the existing driveway. And then the last one is to revisit and provide further detail on the northern level spreader. And these would all be brought up into the part of the conditions where prior to the commencement. And let's see, there was one also I needed. I will modify number 16, the weekly, monthly, after defined storm events for the qualified consultant. Similar to what Bob made reference to in the previous application this evening, have weekly monitoring during the active phases, and then tail that off towards the less active phases.
Okay. And then you captured the 10-foot envelope for the limit of active construction and conditions. It's in your description of the phasing plan.
It is. That was incorporated.
And if they don't, come through with the stuff that, I can't think of everything myself. You all may think of something. So they hear it from everybody. They go back, and then they come back hopefully with what they need.
If I may throw something in there.
Sure, please do.
I think that, I know you have an appreciation for what we do,
Yes.
but we also have to have an appreciation on our side for what you may think is appropriate on the site. Therefore, phasing is important as it relates to what you may think should be done. So if you were going to insist that that house be moved 15 feet to the west, it would certainly modify the phasing. We know phasing has to be done, but I think you have to help us get to the yes part so we can refine the design. I think it's fair to the client, it's expensive, it's time-consuming, and it's not always with the results that either you or us or the client want to see. So we are always in a position of balancing.
Mr. Andrea, I recognize and accept the fact that this is an iterative process.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What I don't understand is, point one, why is there no biological narrative submitted with this application? That is, and you've done this enough times,
I know.
and you've
And
been
it's-
whacked with that.
And,
enough
and,
times.
and we try to find other people that can do that assessment, and it's not always available to them. I try to tell the consultants that work with us, your job is not to defend our design, okay? Your job is to advise us as to what could be done differently to help. Sometimes that's not possible to do in advance. We work together, and then once we've agreed on the concept, we want to make the application so we can get some feedback from you, and then we're going to refine it, just as we refine the phasing plan. And I think that's just the way to do it.
As the staff member who has to prepare the reports for the agency, not having the biological evaluation up front is mind-boggling to me.
In this particular case, the agency thought it was appropriate to use this area as a staging area. So that phasing to us was, well, if we're going to use this area for staging, then what we could be doing can't possibly be a big problem. We're way up and removed from that. So there was a little bit of naivete,
Did
perhaps.
you request a waiver of the
Excuse me?
biological evaluation, given that this was your conclusion? Or you just
I wasn't looking
self-determined?
for a waiver of it by any means. At the end of the day, you're going to require it, and you want to make sure that you're
At the
satisfied with the
beginning of the day.
evaluation.
We're requiring at the beginning of the day.
We'll have to work harder to get that done.
Yes, sir, please, because next time I will move to.
I've been warned. I'll warn the other consultants, too. I understand. You made it very clear tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion to delay.
Did we have
Second.
a motion to continue, or we just continue?
Hey, well,
I don't care either way.
it's not a public hearing, and he's out the door anyway.
Motion to delay. Is there a second?
Sure, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
2020-007, 43 Lockwood Lane, Michael DeVito for Teresa Coder, for maintenance of a culvert. Jay, you,
All right. There's no staff report for this. We were, okay, I guess in the cease and correct hearing, we made the point that this is, it's a violation. Pipe was replaced, a driveway was raised over the culvert. The property owner's challenging to work with. She's got challenges of her own. We're trying to do our best to work with her. The application was submitted very incomplete, but what I want to do is pass down these We do have plans now. We do have photographs. We have a narrative. And we have a letter from Mrs. Coder. The letter from Mrs. Coder, I don't know that we need to discuss tonight, but at least you'll have the materials. And the plans actually look like they have the information that you'll need to make a decision on. So I guess I'll just tell you that the letter is Mrs. Coder's attempt to ask the agency to waive part or all of the fee. So she doesn't come out very clearly and say it, but that's what it is. So we could discuss that maybe next month when staff has had time to look at the plans which we received Friday.
Okay. Very good. This is Mr. DeAndrea. Very good. Okay. Motion to lay? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Looking forward to reading this. Do you want to, should we save these for next month? Put them
Please,
in
but yes, those are for next month. Yes.
Okay.
Are you doing 12 Hillcrest?
Oh, no, I'm not. Sorry, I thought we were done.
Okay.
You're too eager.
Whoa.
No, he
It's
must,
a long time. It's like
you must
Trump.
just be out of New York, that's all.
It's like the Trump like
Thank you.
time.
No, it's not.
It is.
No, don't do that to the poor man.
He is a Trump. Right? So he has- he's- time.
This is ex parte.
All right, so moving right along. Where are we? 2020-008, 12 Hillcrest Lane, Annam and Kirby LLC for Darren and Marion Sloniker for modification of the driveway 15 feet from wetland. Doreen, please.
Benton, Curlin, Rogers, Rossi, and Shandor visited the site on February 24th, 2020. The regulated area on site consists of an intermittent water course with a narrow wetland fringe at the southeastern corner of the property that flows into a scrub wetland at the western end of the property and into a pond further off-site. The applicant's proposing to modify a driveway with porous pavement except for the motor court in front of the garage, which will remain asphalt. The modification will require the removal of 3 trees within the upland review area and will have a net increase of 862 square feet of impervious coverage. The proposed driveway consists of a new entrance location and a courtyard at the front of the residence. To mitigate for this, for the increase of impervious coverage, a detention system will be installed underneath the driveway, consisting of a stone reservoir installed under porous pavement with weirs to control the flow of water. Perforated pipes will discharge to a level spreader that will be installed on the northern rear yard. DPW has reviewed the plan and found it acceptable in concept, but will require some minor revisions. The proposed driveway entrance will be shifted to the south within 15 feet of the water course. A significant amount of fill is required for the new driveway and associated retaining walls. 6 feet of fill is proposed for about 40 feet along the northern stream corridor and continues to taper down along the stream for a combined length of more than 65 feet. The fill averages a distance of about 6 feet from the edge of the stream. If additional trees and shrubs are proposed to be removed along the corridor, the stream corridor, this should be called out further on the plan. The single row of silt fencing that's shown on the plan isn't a sufficient barrier to protect the stream. Additional measures, such as a double row of silt fencing with hay bales in between, should be used. The planting plan has been provided that will vegetate the southern side of the stream with trees and shrubs, boulders, and a large number of perennial plugs.
What?
I counted
Well-
13, but
11 to 13 trees, I believe, that will be removed. And we will put in that many back.
And how many will be, in addition to that, adversely affected possibly by the work and the use of the tennis court?
Well, once the tennis court is constructed, I don't understand your question, I guess.
Sometimes when you do construction, you find roots of trees and that sort of thing.
Oh, no, that is counting all of the trees that we need so that we can build the court. That's why we would build the western wall first, okay, then take everything out, and then take whatever's out, so this way that there isn't any additional, there will be no disturbance beyond the walls on the northern and western side.
So the installation of the walls will not be cutting any roots of existing trees?
Exactly, exactly.
Any other questions?
Are those dimensions for the tennis court and the area around it typical?
That is the typical court, yes.
Thank you.
So,
Told you.
Well, I
120 by 60 is standard. If you can believe that, that is correct.
Yeah, that's what that report measures. I have conditions of approval here, if you're so inclined. The only thing I would say is, given what Mr. Liebman has said, I would change condition 3 and require a final construction plan that shows the details for the well, and the construction sequence, with the walls coming
Yes.
first, and then we would also, the conditions already have a thing about the plantings have to be increased.
So it is asked, so it will be done.
I would move to approve, given Bob's modifications.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great.
I will make a motion to receive applications 1 through 4 on tonight's agenda. Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any questions on Asian approval permits 1, 2, and 5?
1, 2, and 5.
Yeah, jumps from 2 to 5.
No, mine says 3. No, you gotta use this one. You gotta use
It says
this.
annotated.
No, no.
Yeah, you want to actually, you're receiving 1 through 14,
I
1
wanna
through
know-
13.
Oh, wait a minute.
Doreen,
Okay.
Doreen,
I do
why
have a
are there
question.
no violations?
Well, if we keep having warm days like we did today, I'm sure we will.
Okay.
People have to get out.
In other words, you ain't getting out.
All right, so modify that to accept applications 1 through 7. No,
1 through
1
13.
through
1 through
15.
13.
13.
And any questions on the Asian approvals? Okay. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, when you talk to Rocky, Tony DeAndrea
Yes?
about this, tell him to correct the spelling.
Comments? Yeah,
Will do.
Development. I didn't want to bring it up during the meeting, but
I actually had that misspelled on my resume one time. I almost didn't get the job for it.
all right.
So I've been beating on my grandson to send you an application for the summer.
No,
Deadline's coming now.
Yeah, when is the deadline? He's,
It's March 2nd.
I think he's too buried. Those are long.
You can still drop in the office.
I wonder why they were trying.
No, we really didn't cover the main reason for not rejecting applications.
Usually we take
I
one
can't
day.
carry on.
Paper.
Fair enough. They'll just come back.
Too many iterations.
I mean, I'll just send him a note that if you find time.
Here, give me half of those. I've been adding to that pile
Yeah,
aggressively.
I know a lot of them.
I think about them after mine before you start.
I'll take it.
Oh, these were the consent approvals.
Waterways about the same thing.
Junk left over. Chairman, thank you for running very efficient meeting.
For once.
I didn't get any
You too. We got a lot of participation from the agency. Yeah, I like that. Joe was out quiet.
have an extra cup of coffee.
Joe? The meeting's over. Checking on Italy.
Golf clubs are still in the basement.
Well, like one Republican senator once said, when it's inevitable, just relax and enjoy it. Boy, did he run into trouble with that one.
That is correct. Joe Rossi, David's son. David's father, sorry.
Thank you, you too.
Okay, so you have no follow-up as to what they found? No, I don't. Okay. Well, I've checked them, and you don't have any way to tell whether you did get hold of my son. I'm trying to get hold of him now to tell what's going on. Maybe a little late, but you don't have any information that you were able to get. Oh, was that ours? Okay. All right, understood. Thank you. Yeah.
Mitigation planting guidelines. It also doesn't account for any 6 to 12-inch trees that are going to be removed from the upland review area. I know the applicant's preparing a revised plan to show those trees, so we'll have a better idea of that moving forward. Finally, the assessment report states that the applicant will put a deed restriction on the 3/4 acre upland area at the northern end of the lot. However, they're saying they want to have the ability to have hiking trails and the ability to install small structures. I think we'd like to know what kind of structures they're talking about. Having said that, I guess I have to run through the materials that were submitted to the file since the last meeting, which I've alluded to. We have photographs of obstructions in access way to parcel A and B provided by William Kenny. That was submitted at the public hearing session last month. Various email correspondence between staff and the applicant's representatives between January 28th and February 24th. A revised set of plans, which include those driveway details and some other information that was not on the original set. This is from Rocco v. DeAndrea Incorporated, dated February 7th, 2020. Drainage summary report, also February 7th, 2020, from DeAndrea Incorporated. That was covered by a letter from Tony DeAndrea to DPW's senior civil engineer Scott Marucci. That letter's dated February 7th, 2020. Mr. Marucci's review comments are dated February 18th. The wetland and buffer habitat plan was prepared by William Kenny Associates and is dated February 11th. And the assessment report prepared by William Kenny Associates and certified by William Kenny, professional wetland scientist, and Carolyn Matthews, ecologist and certified arborist, is dated February 12th. We have received an extension authorization, so this application public hearing session can go through May 6th. So I would recommend the agency delay. We're awaiting some important information now that we have this authorization.
Thank you, Bob. Mr. DeAndrea?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tony DeAndrea, representing we have received the comments from staff and what we can work with this initial submission and the revision submitted on the 27th to respond to those comments. Initial procedure from the agency from here, we'll be working closely with the depending on environmental consultant to address those considerations mentioned in the staff report. As Bob mentioned, we do have a back and forth between the Wetlands agency and the DPW. We have now resolved the differences, and DPW has granted the approval of our drainage plan. I wanted to point out that we did have design for the septic system presented to the health department under the procedures of the health department. As you know, they often have next another 5 lots in the adjacent subdivision. You know, together we did have those same conditions. In this case, prior to submitting the application, I had a conversation with Director Tesco about whether or not it was going to be required to place the material that create any problems in having done work before a permit was granted. We advised that it would not be held against us, that we could not place the fill of the ledge. We fully expect that ledge layer to be removed once the material is placed, and obviously we can accept that as a condition of an approval. Been working with the owner and the applicant to discuss alternatives to constant size. I understand there's a concern of the agency. Please recognize that the number of bedrooms in the home does not necessarily control the size of the home. Because upstairs bedrooms, perhaps the room is considered a bedroom for design purposes of the health department. In fact, it's in the basement, and maybe has a bathroom adjacent to the plant. So the size of the system does not necessarily relate directly back to the site. We did cite this house in conjunction with the design team, which included an architect, and we decided the home to fit that plateau in the middle of the lot. Based on the topography, unfortunately, it is necessary to do some filling to comply with our grade, plane, obligations for zoning, and also to provide means of treating, controlling, and reducing peak flows from the drainage aspect. So we placed the galleries in appropriate locations so that we have ample traveling time and distance, plus a vertical and horizontal to renovate that septic. Same thing with the placement of the septic system. Rather than take more time, unless there are direct comments that we haven't previously received from the agency, I would cut off here and recognize that, mention that we are working hard to address those final comments that are remaining from our staff report.
Thank you. Agency questions at this point in the process for Mr. DeAndrea? No? Is there public questions or comments? Yes.
Mr. Andre, you're aware that alternatives were required with this application?
Alternatives are fine issues, difficult issues sometimes.
But my question is, were you aware that they were required when the application was submitted?
Yes.
Okay. And you chose not to submit them?
No, that's not true. The alternatives that we're considering here are whether or not to build it. And perhaps we're gathering that your consideration of alternatives is whether or not a home should be smaller or fewer bedrooms.
No, the question is and could have been addressed well before the submission as to whether a smaller footprint would have had smaller implications for fill, for requirements for septic, and for other impacts on the wetlands. So I'd just like to know, have some understanding of why that wasn't considered before submission.
I think that the architects and the owners did consider alternates. Perhaps we didn't express them enough in text so that we can explain how and why we came to the conclusion with this type of home and how best to do it. One of the considerations that they do make is to keep the development consistent with
the home. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm not concerned.
Four stories vertical and have the same number of bedrooms.
I'm not concerned about the number of bedrooms. I'm concerned about the footprint. I'm concerned about the fill. I'm concerned about the impact of the wetlands. I mean, I have bedrooms in my house that are literally 10 by 12.
We will endeavor to explain more on how we arrive at this as the best alternative. And I realize it's a great concern for me.
Okay, there was also a question about rotating the home in a clockwise direction to minimize the impact.
We'll take that into consideration. I haven't heard that before.
It was raised at the last meeting.
It was.
Okay. Might be a good suggestion. But I see initially that that rotation will push everything more into that northwestern area where you're concerned about the fill slope. I don't think that
It would rotate things into
is a
the,
clockwise direction.
right, so to the east, not into the northwest.
And that would do it
If you
for the
combine
body
that,
of the house
and
more.
if you combine that with a smaller footprint, you would have a much smaller impact on the wetlands. At least that's my guess.
Take that back to the architect and the application to see how we can best work with it.
I might note, consistent with your question and your response, just so that we're clear, that this is incomplete is not consequential. And the final,
Sure that all of them
yes, yeah.
have to be considered.
So your conditions of approval require modifications to the plan that you described in terms of the decks and distance from ground.
So, based on the record, there seemed to me to be reason, the 12 development testimony, the need to get all your erosion sedimentation controls on your own property. The applicant did not choose to bring in alternate footprints that address these concerns. So putting out the conditions of approval to say, you do what you want, these basic parameters have to be abided by.
Ms. Sesto, I notice you also have conditions of denial.
I do.
Would you like to take us through those, please?
Sure. So within the conditions of denial, and there was discussion with regards to alternatives, and then the discussion went over to, well, if the agency decides that there is not a significant impact or an impact, are alternatives required? And with the alternatives that the applicant has expressed with regards to the changes in the stormwater management plan, would that be sufficient to qualify? One could make that argument, but what that argument does not address is the permanent consumption of the protective buffer of the proposed lot. And by consuming this lot by something around 60%, we do foreclose the ability to enhance this buffer so that it is more valuable in protecting Miami pond. This is a condition within the regulations, the statutory condition that the commission is intended to consider. Section 10F of the regulations requires a description of how the proposal will change, diminish, or enhance the ecological functions and values of the wetlands and watercourses, and description of that also in association with each alternative. Because we did not have those alternatives, this obviously could not have been presented to us. And so the application is deficient and incomplete by the regulations of the agency, so it would qualify for Section 8.6 to be deemed incomplete and denied. The development of the southern half of the parcel will likely bring long-term impacts to the wetlands and watercourses with the 50 to 70% slopes. I don't believe that the slope is going to remain stable over the life of the house. I think the impact of the flow coming off the deck and other flows that have their way of concentrating in ways that one cannot design for will concentrate on this steep slope. We're going to have soils that have been recently disturbed, and I don't see a homeowner recognizing rill erosion in order to keep that from concentrating concentrating and creating more substantial erosion. The whole protection of the Mianus Pond on the east side of this development rests on maintaining diffused flow. And when we have this very short buffer between the developed area and the watercourse, two things. Either you don't have enough time to create some of that real erosion, or you don't have enough time to diffuse that erosion that is starting up above. So I think that I cannot see the vegetation underneath the deck and certainly underneath that section of the garage having a long-term lifespan. Even with a deck elevated 20 feet up,
Excuse me,
not a-
Pat, could you
yes.
speak into your microphone?
Oh,
Because
I'm
I have
sorry.
a lot of difficulty hearing you.
So sorry.
Thank you.
My point was that the erosion or the vegetation in the long run underneath the decks and the house is not going to be sustained. Light studies aside, there was no discussion about how the water of the dwelling is going to interact with this area. And the erosion over time is simply going to knock these plants out.
So you're saying that erosion and sedimentation, in your professional opinion, is highly probable?
I don't see how this steep slope is going to be stabilized for the long haul. I believe that there will be a point in time where the areas underneath the house, the cantilever portions of the house and underneath the deck will be converted to stone. And maybe that's okay. It wasn't discussed in the application.
This is more discussion, but would having, say for example, the deck is not a slatted deck, but a solid wood deck, and you could gutter it like you could any roof, and then divert that flow so where it doesn't score underneath.
Which was where the previous application had the level spreader down to handle the eastern drainage of the roof, and the level spreader couldn't be sited on a slope where one would expect a level spreader to succeed. So by virtue of collecting the drainage from the deck, I'm not sure where it would discharge to that would not create an erosion problem.
What
It
if
would
it,
have to
what
go
if it
back
discharged
into
under the
It
house?
would have to go back into a retention system that.
Which is not
services other
part of this
parts,
plan.
which isn't part of it.
And then
But could it
lastly,
come off
the
reasonable?
discharge from the level spreader associated with the existing driveway, I think it was, and in fact, it was upon my urging that the applicant took on the existing driveway to look at that existing development and say, okay, now in 2019, what can we do that's better over there? But the solution of putting this level spreader atop an area with successive 2 retaining walls on a 70% slope is not conducive to long-term success with that either.
Thank you. Agency thoughts? You care to tee us off?
Pat, with your conditions of approval and all of your comments there, if the applicants were to agree to all of those, you feel that the project would really satisfy the needs of the agency? Because you asked for some significant changes. I think,
Yes. I think that the record would support an approval.
guess I would, if we were to go down the path of approval, I would add an 18th condition, which would talk to the capturing of runoff from the deck. And that would have to be engineered back to where that runoff is captured and routed to a retention system within the house capacities allowed. Which seems like something that could be figured out pretty easily.
Are you envisioning that this would be a retention system separate from?
It's essentially a gut and the and everything that you do in a timely fashion. Very good. You have a lot of work ahead of you. Any agency comments at this point? Yep.
I always have a comment. Make sure that removal of the dam is one of your alternatives.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to delay or keep the hearing open.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Next is 2020-13, 8 Hickory Drive. Are we looking at these as one unit, these next two, or individually?
That's good.
Okay, so we're looking at 4 and 5 together, 2020-13, 8 Hickory Drive, and 2020-14, 8 Hickory Drive, or 0 Hickory Drive. Soundview Engineers and Land Surveyors, LLC, for Yuri Softman for construction of a single-family residence, driveway drainage, and relocation of a water course. And the other being the same applicant for construction of a single-family residence, driveway and drainage 15 feet from wetlands. Mr. Clausen, please.
All right, Mr. Benton, Ms. Curlin, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Rossi, and Mr. Schoendorf visited the site last Friday. The documents in the files are pretty much identical. Completed application form by the applicant's agent, Robert Zmarzlak of Soundview Engineers and Land Surveyors, LLC, dated January 23rd, 2020. A set of site plans certified by Mr. Zmarzlak, dated January 15th, and the topographic survey certified by Aidan McCann of Soundview Engineers, dated December 23rd, 2019. Plan entitled Site Development Plan Alternative 1, also prepared by Soundview Engineers, certified by Mr. Zmarzlak, dated January 15th. A drainage report which combines both properties, 0 and 8 Hickory. This is prepared by Soundview, certified by Mr. Zmarzlak, dated January 15th. The soils report was prepared by William Kenny Associates and certified by William Kenny Soil Scientist, dated May 7th, 2019. 25 on-site photographs taken by Wetlands Agency staff on February 4th, 2020. Public hearing legal notice dated January 29th, and the list of abutters who were mailed the notification on February 7th. The wetland and watercourse assessment prepared by William Kenny Associates, certified by William Kenny, professional soil scientist, and Carolyn Matthews, ecologist and certified arborist, dated February 13th. And a plan entitled Wetland and Buffer Habitat Enhancement Planting Plan prepared by William Kenny Associates, certified by William Kenny Landscape Architect, dated February 13th. I also, since the staff report was written, received comments from Scott Marucci, DPW Senior Civil Engineer. This is dated February 20th. His comments and attached plans basically instructing the applicant's engineer to provide additional information. I also received an email from Cindy Lyle. This is, I'm passing down. This was dated February 21st. She's a neighbor. And just one email I sent to everybody on Friday admitting I'd overlooked this alternative plan one because in the staff report I said there were no alternatives. So it was a little bit, papers were flying this month. So there is a house at 8 Hickory Drive. There's no house at 0 Hickory.
Excuse me, can I make a comment, please?
No, you may not.
There is an address, 0 Hickory Drive, but it's not that.
Did you hear what the chairman said? You're welcome to make a comment when
When I
the
call,
public
when I ask.
comment period starts.
I'm just trying to make sure you got the right stuff.
Well, I guess I'll just make a comment. When a property has not been given an address, usually the applicant's listed as 0. That doesn't mean there couldn't be 2 or 3 zeros in the street. Okay, so house at 8 Hickory, the applicant wants to demo the house and construct a new house with a driveway, deck, and drainage system. The vacant lot next door to this 8 Hickory site would also get a house, driveway, deck, and drainage. At 8 Hickory, there are no wetlands at the vacant lot. 8 Hickory has a water course with fringing wetlands. The applicant's plan includes the elimination of 115 linear feet of water course and its narrow wetland fringe, and the preferred alternative, I suppose, because that's the one that is the complete site plan set, proposes a creation of a similar length of water course which will discharge to a constructed emergent wetland at the existing water course. Okay, so this is an application where the basic application requirements listed in section 7.7 through 711 of the regulations have been addressed with the exception that we only have one alternative. So that may be the only alternative, I don't know. But that alternative is, in my opinion, not exhaustive of all the alternatives because it doesn't show an alternative location to the house. Perhaps, as I note in this report, maybe a variance can be obtained from Zoning Board of Appeals to allow the house to be shifted closer to the road. Is not an alternative as to the size of the house or the size of the deck. The deck is enormous. All of which could allow for the preservation of some or all of the water course they propose to eliminate. This elimination and creation of water courses is a very significant activity. The applicant has the obligation to demonstrate there's no more prudent and feasible alternative. Now, just a couple general comments. I'm not going to get too into detail because I think we do need to look at alternatives, but regarding the applicant's proposal, let's see. The habitat enhancement plan covers both properties, and the site plan shows 24 large trees will need to be removed. This is approximately from the upland review area across these two parcels to accommodate the construction and grading they're proposing. We have mitigation planting guidelines that sort of set planting stations with spacing for trees or groupings of shrubs. And while the applicant's habitat enhancement plan conforms to the guidelines, it's really going to create a change in the cover type on the property from a large tree canopied overstory type situation to a lower shrub situation with scattered trees. The change in cover type has not been justified by the applicant. Let's see. The applicant's proposal to mitigate for the 1,009 square feet of wetland watercourse proposed for elimination is to create 1,190 square feet of new watercourse channel and emergent wetland. We need much more information regarding the configuration of the watercourse channel. This is shown, this channel is shown going down to
Are proposed to retain the fill on the northern side of the stream. A more intensely landscaped buffer to include trees and shrubs along both sides of the stream may improve overall water quality and may help to offset the impacts of the driveway. For example, I would like to know if trees and shrubs can be placed on the less steep areas adjacent to the retaining wall, and also to the west of the retaining wall, south of the residence. The slope would be prone to erosion. Measures should be taken to stabilize the slope, such as hydroseeding, sediment and erosion control blankets or heat mats. Alternatives for the driveway have not been provided for section 7-10E. For example, can the new courtyard be accessed from the current driveway entrance? Can the courtyard, driveway entrance, and walls and the fill be shifted to the north to allow greater separating distance from the stream? Can the courtyard be reduced or eliminated? We did receive some feedback on Friday afternoon regarding the question for alternative. It was stated that the driveway cannot be modified due to the grade, that the slope would be too steep to meet the town of Greenwich driveway requirement. And you can speak more to that.
Thank you, Ms. Carol Andrews. Hi, my name is Christian Fontanilla from Ottoman Kirby, representing the
Sorry.
owners.
I don't think she's
I
done
wanted
yet.
to finish.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I am recommending a delay at this time so that we can give the applicant opportunity to respond to the points raised and any other questions that you may have.
Hi, again, I'm Christian Fontanilla from Ottoman Kirby, representing the owners of 12 Hillcrest Lane. And I'm here to say that we have addressed all the comments and recommendations, and clients have approved, and they will conform. We do, however, believe that we do not need to delay the approval because all of these bullet points and recommendations could be done on revision and resubmitted before the next agenda. And we have been accepted by engineering department, the current design, so we pretty much believe that this should not be delayed.
Do you think that the planting plan can be revised to include some more planting? to the south
Yeah,
of the
definitely.
house?
I've seen some emails from the landscape architect that was sent to you. They've been working with areas and how much plant should be added to the current planting plan that was submitted. And I believe that they're still working on it right now. We've been talking to clients back and forth. But I believe that should not take long to finish.
I'm sorry, I don't understand why the driveway can't stay where it is, the way it is.
If we go further north, the elevation of the beginning of the driveway goes above, and it's not going to conform with the the first 25 feet requirements of engineering department or highway department.
Right,
So,
well, this isn't going to conform with wetland requirements. So
Yeah,
you've got a real problem. What's wrong with the existing asphalt driveway?
Well, as for the existing, that will be really steep to access if we're going to stay with the current courtyard design. And we have to stay with the current square footage of the courtyard because we have to use that as an LID component. Because we're doing a porous asphalt.
You've got to fill the buffer to the wetland.
Yeah, and that would be,
Find an alternative.
yes, we did find alternative. We tried to move it further north 20 feet, and that won't work with the slope and the grading. We went down to 10 feet, and it still won't.
What if you don't have the motor course?
Well, we will have, we can't conform with the LID because it's kind of what we rely on to conform with the stormwater management
You
regulations.
could just have infiltrators, it doesn't have to be under a driveway.
Yes, but we believe that the porous asphalt would help with the velocity using the slope that we're proposing right now. We could store most of the water in the front yard of the property using that courtyard and the neck of the driveway. So that's why we can't consider any other.
The drainage manual is not meant to justify wetland impacts. That's counterproductive.
For the wetland impacts, that what we believe that the planting plan, we could improve better using the recommendations that you put on the staff report.
Well, not
That
only
we've,
I
yeah,
wanna
we did not add
I
that.
want to see you use your creativity to find a solution that does not put any fill anywhere next to the wetland. At all.
Okay. I will bring
And
that
if
up to.
And if that means leaving the driveway as it is, where it is, without a motor court, so be it.
Okay, we'll bring that up to the architect and the client. But we still believe that this.
Try and explain to them that at least one member is dead set against
Yeah.
the plan that you put forward.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. No further comments.
Any other comments from the agency? Okay.
Is it on the record that that site was visited?
Yes,
Oh,
your aim did open with
Yes.
that.
Very good. Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good luck. Okay, moving right along. And for the coup de grace, 2020-009, 571 Round Hill Road, FC Minor and Company, Inc., for Scott Ganeles?
Yes.
For construction of tennis court, retaining wall, drainage, and plantings,
Yes.
37 feet from
I have
wetlands.
answers.
Okay, besides the tennis court, the application is to drill a new well. The well is shown 12 feet from the little pond on the applicant's property. This tennis court location has been approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. I note in the staff report that there is a large upland area at the western end of the property, across the wetlands from the house. This does not look like it's a more prudent, feasible area, given that it's, dense shrub vegetation, and it would require all kinds of disturbance in addition to the actual court. So, we have an approved from ZBA location for a court versus a no-build alternative. What's going to happen if they build a court here? Well, about a scattered, medium-sized deciduous trees will be removed. About 13 trees from the upland review area. The planting plan submitted with the application is not sufficient mitigation for this tree loss. The mitigation and the expansion of the demarcated wetland buffer is not discussed by the applicant how this will actually mitigate the construction impacts and any long-term impacts. This would be required by Section 710F of the regulations. Something that should be, Mr. Liebman could probably answer this evening. Why is the machine access proposed around the east side of the house? And is that actually feasible, given that you're bringing in 258 cubic yards of fill point, but I had visions of flooding. Oh, the other thing they'd done, they had blocked the brook with fill and diverted it around the dam so they could work on the dam in the dry. So this is really something. Stop work order is issued on site. We went immediately to cease and correct. The violation was discovered, I think, on the 20th of November. Cease and correct hearing was held the 25th of November. We took this right to you all. You required that a corrective application be made. You also authorized the issuance of municipal fines. We issued fines for each of the 6 separate violations that were found. The fines totaled $6,000 and were paid by Mr. and Mrs. Pollock and the site contractor, Corona Masonry Work. Okay, we also notified the state dam safety office. We notified the diversion folks who work on watercourse diversion, and we notified Mr. Gephardt in the fisheries division. Dam safety came down amazingly. They came down like the next day, and they were pretty stunned as well. They looked at what was there. They got into the loop. When they got the set of plans for the dam, they determined that this dam is a class AA hazard, which means that they do not regulate it. All regulation related to this dam is done by this agency. When we notified the applicant on January 28th that the application would be considered at a public hearing, all of the regulation requirements came into effect through Section 7-11, and this application is very deficient. I'm not going to go down the list. It's in the staff report, but kind of amazingly, for an application that's supposed to restore, mitigate what was done, there's absolutely no mitigation proposed. So this is very incomplete. What the applicant wants to do is maintain the repair they did, maintain the work they did on the dam. We don't have a survey that shows the pre-existing condition of the dam. We have photographs taken over the years that give glimpses of the dam. What they've done is they've basically leveled out the top of the dam. So if, in my opinion, my recollection, my looking at the photographs, that dam was more or less a jagged, broken top. They're damming more water than they did before the repairs. Which gets to, let's see. You know, the hydraulic effect of what they've done compared to what they had has to be presented, and analyzed by a qualified engineer. Let's see, let me go back. Got a little agitated there. Let me go back and go right to the report. The applicant wants to maintain their dam. They want to complete installation of a dry hydrant that they'd started. I saw the pipe the day I was there. I had no idea what they were doing, but now that I see it on the plan, I understand that this PVC pipe running down the slope was the intake for the dry hydrant they want to install right next to their driveway. They want to, and then they want to dredge the pond behind the dam to a depth of 4 feet. They also want to take these dredge spoils and fill the bypass channel that flows around the dam to the east. And then in the narrative, they say they want to restore the areas adjacent to the brook that were cleared, but we don't have a restoration plan. So, we need a lot more details as to how they're going to do the dredging. This is a major water course in the town. Depending on rain events and things, the level can go up and down pretty quickly. And how they're going to even do the dredging, I mean, they're going to get a machine to the other side of the brook. They say that their plan shows a temporary wooden bridges to be used. Again, if the brook comes up, is this thing going to stay in place? So then the question becomes for the agency, should this dam be allowed to remain? As the ecology of dam removal summary report I sent out with your staff reports, there are a lot of benefits to removing dams. This removal of this dam, for instance, would restore a almost 2-mile long stretch of uninterrupted flow along this east branch of the Byram River, and also connect an additional mile of Knapp's Brook to the lower downstream part of the Byram River East Branch downstream from the dam. You've got water quality issues, sediment transport, habitat connectivity, and other benefits that restoring flow to the brook may produce. The applicant has to show the agency that their alternative of maintaining what they have is the most prudent and feasible, least impactful thing, and they're pretty far from having shown that at this point. You know, we need a restoration plan. It appears to me that the wetland area across the brook that was cleared and grubbed, based on the town GIS images and photographs from 2013, it was maintained as a scrub shrub meadow type low vegetation area on the northern end, and on the southern end of the disturbed area, it was a wooded swamp. So their restoration plan better be aimed at doing something like that rather than creating a lawn, for instance. We don't have any details of what dredging method is going to be used. We don't have details about the earthen berm they propose to close the bypass inlet off with, whether the berm has to be engineered. If it's not engineered, is an earthen berm going to be sufficient to withstand flows as this river comes and goes in velocity? And finally, the plan itself shows the 100-year floodplain and floodway lines offset from the river. This is not the applicant's fault. This is taken straight from the FEMA map. But now that it's before us, I think we should have the applicant go to FEMA and get this sorted out so that we have a clear view, especially where the floodway is, because that's the velocity zone. So, I recommend the agency keep the hearing open. This is a violation that has to be addressed. We want the applicant to do the work to give us the information to address it. But, as I said, the application's incomplete, so if this information is not provided in a timely manner, it is possible for the agency to deny it and order the applicant to do whatever it wishes. This is a violation. You can order the corrective action.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Plaza.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, we pray to continue. We obviously have our work cut out for us. We're ready to.
Okay. Let me open this up to public comment. I know that seems to be a few people that would like to limit your comments to wetland impacts. This is not planning and zoning. This is the wetlands agency. So please come up.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Cindy Lyle. My home at 28 Caroline Place is directly behind the new development at the bottom of a very large and very steep hill. I'd like to express my serious concern over the application. I'm incredibly worried that changes to the existing landscape, grading, drainage,
sort of, this isn't a subdivision application, this is a pre-existing lot. So the structures themselves would be subject to zoning, and there's no public input component associated. Zoning.
Please, yes. State your name for the record, please.
My name is John Sayes. I am neighbor with Parkland.
Mr. James, can I ask you a question? You're testifying that the stream is not intermittent, it flows all the time? Okay, so it's misrepresented on the plan. It's not an intermittent stream.
There is water in it. I see it every day. I think what happens a lot in town is as development, because I have a similar situation where, on my street, and over time, more and more basements are being under drained, and it feeds into local streams, and so they start to flow more consistently than they had prior. Thank you.
So, and I wanted to, this is just kind of an outline of, our concerns.
Okay, very good.
Not all of them are.
We'll enter that.
Thank you.
Hello, Mark Hemingway. I actually live at 0 Hickory Drive, that's why I'm thinking there's nothing going on here. I agree with everything.
We're not going to tear down your house.
I just don't want somebody showing up, sidewalk on our property. I agree and concur with everything that Mr. Clausy and everybody else has said here. I think it was in the record wrong, forgive me if I'm mistaken, alluded to Byram River. Runoff from this definitely goes down to the Byram River. I would be concerned with any disruption and erosion flowing not only through our neighbors' properties, but into the Byram River, which is filling up into that basin. So I would have a concern, I don't know how you do it, I'm not that kind of guy, but make sure that anything that's disturbed doesn't roll down into the river. That's
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Please. No. I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Bill. Okay. comments. This will be continued. I will make a motion to delay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You can anticipate end of March. Very good.
Yes, March 23rd.
It was quicker than I thought it was going to be with 5 public hearings.
Change the borders of the river. One invites other towns. It's like magic. The river doesn't like to change its course.
Okay, that concludes the public hearing part of this night's entertainment. Anyone need a little 5-minute break?
Yeah, maybe
Good
5
idea.
minutes.
Okay, let's
Thank
just do the consent approvals, and
Yeah.
then we'll go. Okay. We have
Either
two
way, do the
consent
consent
approvals
approvals.
tonight,
We're doing the consent
20-001, 29 Stanwich Road, and 2020-004, 212 Cogniwa Road. Any questions on the consent approval? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very good. We're going to pause for 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
So very sweet.
Bio break from the room, and we'll get started at 8:53. 8:52.
Every
8:53.
word.
8:53.
2 hours. Because sometimes I sleep at 6, 7, I get up.
Pending applications. It's hot in here now. Turn the heat on before. Of course, these windows aren't operable. Committee member doing a Hudsucker proxy out there. Sir? Yep.
It would help if they turned it on. It would be louder. Now it's on. It was off before.
turn this one to cold. Was that you? You turned it down to cold? That's all right.
Brian, yeah, somebody did. Not me, though.
Someone turned ours to cold.
Yeah.
It wasn't me.
I know, you come in here, it's like a gym.
Uh-oh. That was a full crew, huh?
Yeah.
See now.
It'll be
They
too
lock
soon.
us, they lock us in.
Uh,
Yeah.
Don't go out and come back in.
Where?
And sort of, now I'm going back and forth as to whether I should do it 8,000.
Wait, so what's the situation with zero?
September,
Is
the
it like
world's gonna be over, or else this
zero
coronavirus
towards the
is-
address?
Yeah.
And I was gonna connect to Beijing, now I'm gonna connect to Istanbul.
Well, I guess we have a plan to, well, because, no, because Pat's Jews, it's an existing lot. So it should have been.
It's an existing lot.
It's just part, it's. when-
No,
when
zero
they-
had no eight.
Zero,
had no
you have
house.
eight,
Right.
eight has a house.
So why would okay, because zero's coming in like it doesn't
Well,
have.
the end of
Oh,
May.
But
good,
that's-
he's back again. Oh, this is.
I wouldn't get on a boat.
No, it's not on a boat, it's a land trip. Well, you're gonna go in an airplane for, 8 or 10 hours, and that's even more constricting.
Okay, so, let's get going. Welcome back, everyone. Next application for consideration is 2019-109, 249 Valley Road, Rocco v. DeAndrea, Inc., for Timothy Saunders Jr. for two-lot subdivision and construction of a single-family residence, 11 feet from wetlands. Ms. Sesto, please.
At the last meeting of the agency, the public hearing did close, and members requested that I put together a summary of the project, which you have in your hands now. This is a two-lot subdivision. The entire new parcel is within the upland review area. That may not be wholly accurate. A substantial part of it is in the upland review area. Approximately 60% of the new lot would be permanently consumed by the driveway and the house. The stormwater management plan for the new lot includes the pervious driveway, which would collect and treat underneath it. The 100-year storm flows in excess of that would flow to an area of infiltration under what would be the basement of the floor, but given the slope of the property, there's a void under there, so it's an elevated basement. There is no mechanism to physically access the space below the house. That was a concern that was responded to by the applicant in as much as the gutters of the house, which were originally going to go there, now go to the front driveway and then would pass into that space in an extreme storm event. Our own peer review, as well as DPW, determined that the management system is acceptable. The proposal includes upgrading the stormwater management plan for the existing house, which includes the parking area in front of the garage to be converted to porous pavement. No test holes were performed in this area, and the likelihood of finding ledge is high. When you look at the under drain that's associated with this area, it's set at an elevation 4 feet below existing grade. I do have concerns whether or not that would be attainable. The under drains are not shown on the pervious pavement detail. So I'm assuming that they're going at the bottom of that reservoir, which would provide then filtration of stormwater, but not infiltration. Then the flows from that under drain would go to a level spreader that is. So there is a level spreader, which would be right off here at the eastern edge of the parking area. There is a short retaining wall there in association with the parking area. And then there's another little retaining wall just below it. And then what's not shown on the map is a third retaining wall, which is the tallest of the three. The level spreader would have a very short distance between it and the second retaining wall. The grades out there pitch to the north, and the wall itself has a lip that would, flows that went out through the level spreader would then be forced to go and concentrate to the north, go down to then the lowest tier to the next retaining wall, and then cascade over that. I do have concerns that configuration on a 50 to 70% slope, if that area is more 70% slopish, would be problematic and cause erosion. That was not discussed within the applicant's materials that I recall. The house footprint of the proposed house, 2,400 square feet, and the closest portion of the house being a deck, which is cantilevered 20 feet above the ground, is 10 feet from the wetland direct overhead configuration. Despite direct requests for alternative footprints to the house, none were provided. The applicant made a point with regards to alternatives that by virtue of the revisions to the stormwater management plan, they did satisfy that requirement. The new lot does not receive overland flow from off-site areas, so this limits the role of the existing vegetated buffer protecting Mianus Pond from non-point source pollution, such that it's really in charge of what's going on this lot. It doesn't have a function in filtered water from off-site areas. The land to the east of the proposed residence, post-construction will have a 50 to 70% slope. The opportunity for water to concentrate will result in erosion. Even real erosion fostered by the flow through the deck and overflowing gutters. These gutters are like, those are gutters, they do overflow on occasion. And that real erosion and unplanned flow from that side of the house, the potential for creating erosion pollution to Mianus Pond exists, especially since it is a steep slope and it's a pretty short run. But conversely, a short run means you don't have all that much to erode. The project is not wholly contained within the subject property or entirely outside the floodplain. If you recall, there was discussion with regards to the floodplain. FEMA has the floodplain boundary up. Anyway, midway. The FEMA flood boundaries up here. Mr. DeAndrea made the point that the elevation of the dam associated with Mianus Pond sets the elevation at 16.8. So going with that logical point of view, setting the floodplain at 16.8, we have erosion controls that are below that elevation, and then the erosion controls actually are shown off the property. So it would seem entirely reasonable that all erosion controls need to be on the subject property and at the 16.8 elevation or above. It was requested of Mr. DeAndrea early on in the process to provide profiles of where the different floodplains might reach. You know, the 2-year floodplain down much lower than 16.8, or given the configuration of the site, it just rises up and is pretty well contained. That information was not provided, so the only thing we have to go on is the 16.8. We also have, by their own expert 12 development, who stated that an envelope around the house foundation of 10 feet is necessary to conduct their work. So that sets some parameters about where erosion controls should be and where 12 development needs to work. The planting plan functions in 3 capacities. One is to repair the damage from the development of the new lot. Second is to compensate for the violation where 15 mature trees were removed from the primarily from the northern half of this property. And then the third component of the plan is to serve as mitigation for the permanent consumption of a portion of the protected upland buffer. As it relates to enhancing the remaining buffer to compensate for the development and protect Hyannis Pond, the applicant is relying on the use of off-site property owned by the town to achieve their mitigation goals in part, while other applicants have planted on town property as part of a mitigation. This was by way of opportunity, not necessity. For this lot, given that the house consumes all, in some areas, up to 10 feet from the property boundary, there is some necessity to actually incorporate off-site property to achieve those mitigation goals. The proposal includes rooted plants, but just up under, the rooted plants are shown under the deck and under this cantilever's sunroom, or I forget what the purpose of that section of the building was meant to be. And then there's another section over here. Right. Given the importance of having well-rooted vegetation from that structure east to the pond, I would propose that the rooted material should persist beyond just the footprint of the structure itself. I also have concerns that the solar, going back to the last point, the steep slopes, again, 50 to 70% slopes east of the house are quite steep and going to be difficult to stabilize and keep stable over the life of this project. The solar study did not include shade from existing and proposed trees in that study. Mature trees do exist along the southern portion of the pond, and they will cast shade to the north and west. I have a sense that the expectation, I don't have a sense, it is my position that the overhanging decks and the overhanging sunroom, and then there's the overhanging garage, which are shown to be exposed, the material under there is not likely to survive in the long run. If you think about the way decks drain, the water concentrates in the gap between the boards, which drops down, and I imagine any of us could picture several decks that we've been under, and you see that line, that drip line that came from the deck above. And again, going back to the concept, if there's occasions where the gutters in the back side of the house overtop, that would negatively impact the vegetation below. If the deck were moved further to the north over the stairway leading down to the lower portion of the property, at least that expanded portion of deck would be over other hardscape, I'll call it, and the plants that are under that expanded portion of deck as it sits now would be fully exposed and not subject to erosion from the runoff of the deck. Let's see, alternately, or perhaps in conjunction, the minimum separating distance between all parts of the structure, being cantilevered or not, can be set at 25 feet from the pond's edge. That mostly would provide additional off the southern cantilevered portion of the deck and that little piece of sunroom that is less than 20 feet from the wetland. That would require redesign to push that back a bit further. That would alleviate some of the concerns with this narrow, steep section, and should you have failure of that vegetation, you have very little room in which to compensate for that. Mr. Kenny notes that 15 trees were removed as part of the violation. Only 6 overstory trees are being proposed, so this is not a clear compensation for that violation. The planting plan should be revised to include 15 native species, shade species, and 1/2 of the understory trees that are proposed on the new lot. The trees on the new lot are almost entirely, if not entirely, shade understory trees. The value of the shade trees associated with the southern lot is just as important as with the northern lot, and shade trees should be incorporated there. So part of the 15 trees that are to be replanted to compensate for the violation, half of the understory trees proposed on the new lot should be swapped out for those shade trees. The standard of control for invasive species, if you recall, the condition of determining success was that the invasive species would not be dominant after 5 years, which is to me not a success, a standard for invasive species controlled by anything I've seen. And if you're at less than 50% after 5 years, go to year 7 and it will be the dominant species again, hence why they're invasive. The shrubs not meeting the standard that the agency looks for are 2 to 3 feet in size. Actually, we usually go 3 to 4 feet, but given the extent of ledge, the root ball on a 2 to 3 foot size shrub would be easier to manage. The applicant offered a conservation easement as mitigation to help ensure the land east of the two homes would remain naturally vegetated, and that would be worthwhile. For the planting plan, the gravel and stone path proposed for the currently developed lot, the northern lot, does not reflect the character of the land and poorly conceived as it relates to stability. It shows this stone path running perpendicular down to 70% slope. There is no trail design where that is a sustainable outcome. In the light of a narrow work envelope, the location of the western line of silt fence should be staked by a surveyor at the outset of the project, and the phasing plan shows under phase 1 the limit of active construction going down to the pond edge, which is inconsistent with the oral testimony provided, and of course that would put the limit of construction onto town land, which would be inappropriate. Looking back, I think early on in the process, perhaps Mr. Benton asked about the disposition of the dock, and no, that dock does not have its proper permit and should not be considered part of this application and should be removed by April 1st, given that, or they could come in for an application and try to rectify that, given that it is not permitted. So with that in mind, I do have severe reservations about this parcel, but I also understand that there's testimony within the record that could support an approval. So given those two paths, I have provided the agency with conditions of approval as well as conditions or reasons for denial, rather.
And Pat, the conditions of approval seem to pick up a lot of the things you commented on.
Yes, it was the intent to pick up and incorporate those things.
Joe, couldn't hear you.
Sorry?
Couldn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was asking Pat whether the conditions of approval picked up all the comments that she's just been making.
I think you're right. I don't recall incorporating the phasing.
I don't see the phasing plan. I think I see everything else. So if we could add that in there, I would be happy to say that's okay.
I noticed that the list of documents concludes with an October 21st document, and there were many subsequent
There
documents.
were. I did hit the send button prior to updating the list of documents, but the record of the application, because I read the elements into the record at every meeting,